Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet. We're coming to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States. I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President and Executive Director of the Emerald Planet. And as you know, we're looking around the globe for those 1,000 best practices that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. The technologies, the products, and the services, and of course, the people that are making a difference. We have experts that are going to be talking with us about building codes, but in the form of pre-disaster planning and pre-disaster construction. And how do we address these 195 cities that are straddled these deep earthquake faults around the globe? Many of these cities are mega cities, over 10 million souls in them. Many others are over 1 million. And so the prospect of catastrophic loss is huge, and how are we going to address that as we move forward through the 21st century when there's an increase of category 6 to 8 earthquakes by almost 300% in the last decade. And one of the gentlemen that's addressing this is David B. Haydes, who is the Senior Advisor, Institute for Building Technology and Safety. And this is an organization, I understand, David, that actually, even though it's located in the United States, really has a global reach. So what is the Institute for Building and Safety?
The Institute for Building Technology and Safety, IBTS in short, is a not-for-profit corporation headquartered in Ashburn, Virginia, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C., as you know. It has offices in other parts of the United States, such as Albany, New York, Washington, D.C., and so forth, Pennsylvania, Louisiana, and Texas. And we're expanding into developing countries as we speak. IBTS is, as I said, is a not-for-profit. Its board of directors are appointed by the 5 organizations that represent state and local governments in the United States. And so we have direct access to state and local government participation in all of our work and feedback from them. And our mission, in perhaps 1 or 2 sentences, is to accelerate progress and quality in the built environment.
Well, looking at this Institute of Building for Technology and Safety, it's interesting how you put these two together. You got the building technology and the safety features of that. And of course, as we move through the 21st century, we're noticing with climate change, there's more severe thunderstorms, tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, of course, that you and I have talked with
yes.
before. And so, but it looks like you've been at this for a long time of the building technology and the safety. So this is nothing new to your association.
Well, building codes and building regulations are ultimately intended to protect the safety of the occupants of the buildings and the citizens in general. And technology and safety meet in such issues as dealing with mitigating the effects of natural disasters. I mean, a lot of technology involved in how to design buildings to resist earthquakes.
Well, looking at the slide we have right here, you know, this is really this juxtaposition where you have the infrastructure, you know, as far as lighting, water, sanitation, roads, ports, as well as the buildings. So how does your organization reach out to incorporate all these different ideas so that you're reaching into the total community?
Well, we basically try to support and build capacity of local governments to deal with questions such as you're asking. And we do that work either by training local government officials or by, in fact, performing the functions of local government officials under contract. We do third-party code enforcement.
You know, looking at the build back, can we talk about Haiti, Turkey, Taiwan, and then of course you had the huge earthquake, tsunami as far as Indonesia a few years ago. and then Fukushima with Japan. So in most cases, I know that your particular group is trying to build back better, build to the most recent codes and technology that you have. But yet, when you look at a place like Haiti and many other countries, it's almost like we go back to what we had before, which was catastrophic loss. So how do we transition these societies so they go beyond, you know, what they have from 20, 30, maybe 50 years ago to looking even across the horizon to better ways of building to mitigate against these natural disasters?
Well, we need to understand that the natural disasters impact developing countries in a much more drastic manner than they impact developed countries. And every time we have a disaster, such as the recent Haiti earthquake, everybody talks about build back better. But what we find, unfortunately, is that that's not happening for the most part, because build back better requires the capacity to build back better, and that capacity involves a quality control system of construction, a building regulatory system that ensures quality of construction, and that kind of a system cannot be imposed from the top.
Yeah, this is something that you really have to be involved with the local officials, national officials, and even the community itself must have buy-in in order to have this build back better, because you know, if you have a catastrophe, they just want to get back into a house that's stable and it's safe and it protects them from the elements.
Absolutely, and one of the issues that we see when people try to implement Build Back Better, one of the first ideas is, well, we need a building code. And so all the developed countries, United States and Europe and Canada, try to push their building codes on these countries. But what no one realizes, and this is where we try to come in, is that just having a building code on a shelf doesn't ensure quality of construction. Build Back Better means that there needs to be an entire infrastructure of support to enforce and implement that code. And we like to use the term quality control more than regulatory system, because regulatory sounds like a police. And
something is being forced, and particularly if it's coming from the U.S. or Europe or Japan, you know, we're forcing outside, you know, their structure and how they understand how buildings should be built or managed and protected in the community.
Our concept for Haiti is to begin to figure out how to train the population to recognize quality construction. Mm-hmm. Every mother should be able to recognize a safe or an unsafe house and really be unwilling to move into an unsafe house.
And same for schools and same for hospitals.
Yes. And so our concept in Haiti is not just government officials or local mayors, although they're all important. We think we need to begin with the community and the people at the lowest level of society to begin to recognize the value and importance of quality of construction.
So what you're doing then is you're looking at this, David, as going into the community, maybe have community forums, but it really is a public relations and a promotional piece, as well as really the technical aspects of how to build these buildings, you know, whether it's a private home or a school, a health clinic, a road that's going to be used by the population.
There are technical aspects to building quality control. For example, plans have to be submitted and reviewed. Inspectors have to go out to the site to see that what was planned is actually being built. There needs to be a system in the country that approves the quality of materials. There needs to be a system that approves the builders themselves. All of that is capacity building, but if the people don't have confidence in that system, then it doesn't matter how many inspectors you have, it won't work. It needs to be based on the acceptance of the importance of quality of construction.
Well, looking at this, talking about quality, also energy efficiency, energy conservation is all part of that, where you're cutting the cost to the citizens and to the public, to the governments and businesses. And I know this is something that you're really focused on as well, is how do you implement these new renewables in order in these buildings to cut the cost, increase efficiency, and at the same time not be using fossil fuels to heat and cool these structures. Even if you're in Haiti, which is a very hot country, you still want to use insulation and a very efficient use of energy so that it's more comfortable for everyone.
Yes, and of course the building techniques in the United States will be quite different from in a place like Haiti. But energy conservation is an objective that supersedes all these countries. We're actively involved in energy audits and energy conservation here in the United States. It's amazing how many public and private commercial buildings waste so much energy and how much of it can be saved just by management, not even hardware or not even installing certain products.
Well, I think that goes back to the education, David, and also a public relations campaign so that people feel comfortable that somebody's not really trying to control my life or tell me how to live, use the assets that we have, but somebody really cares the fact that actually I can use a minimum as far as energy is concerned, then I can invest it in school. I can invest it in most countries have school uniforms and they need to have their books and their backpacks and all these things so they can spend their money there, not just on energy wastefulness within their structures.
And also to add that it's not just a question of the safe building, it's a question of the land use, of building in the right place, knowing that certain locations, certain slopes, certain areas that are subject to flooding should just not be built on. And it's part of the awareness of building quality. It's not just building construction. It's also land use planning.
We only have about a minute and a half left. You know, as I told you, David, things go very quickly when you're talking about these issues. Very complex, but also quite important. What would you like to share with the government officials, but also the citizens in the different countries that we're reaching right now?
I think the most important is to recognize that buildings can have good quality or poor quality, and that those measures of quality can be identified. They're not just, it doesn't require a graduate engineer necessarily to identify the difference between safe and unsafe. We would like to bring a situation where every citizen will have some basic understanding of the concept of building safety.
Now, looking at safety, we have just a few more seconds tying in energy efficiency and conservation. 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Well,
quick.
It's a tough call because very often we have competing societal objectives, and sometimes we focus on just building back better, but part of building back better is saving energy.
Fantastic. And thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
Often calls getting nuclear weapons a religious duty.
Today, materials that can be used to make nuclear weapons are stored in more than 40 countries.
Sometimes protected by just a chain-link fence.
Yet not enough is being done to lock down these materials
before terrorists steal them.
Why did we learn all this?
My mother,
my son,
my sister-in-law
were all murdered September 11th.
Help protect America.
Together we can.
Please join us.
The stem cell issue is being debated throughout the country. Truth is, most everyone has an opinion, even if they don't know the facts.
Let's stop arguing and start really understanding the potential of stem cell research.
For us and for millions of Americans living with disabilities, get the facts.
Call 1-877-842-3442 for free information from the Stem Cell Research Foundation. That's 1-877-842-3442.
Following the tragic events of September 11th, there have been hundreds of violent attacks against innocent Americans.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
Remember, please stop the hate.
We're stronger when we are united.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
One nation under God.
Indivisible.
With liberty
and justice
for all.
In America, there's either room for everyone, or it's not America. Don't pick the wrong fight.
Let's keep America land of the free.
Stop the hate.
Planning a home renovation? Put this at the top of your to-do list. Because after 10 years, none of you are protected against tetanus and another potentially fatal disease, diphtheria. A minor injury, such as a cut or a scrape, can put you at risk for a tetanus infection. And while safety gear offers some protection, an up-to-date vaccination called the TD Booster is the best insurance against tetanus. So get the TD booster. If it's been 10, do it again.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe for those 1,000 best practices, the new best ideas, the technologies, the products, and the services that are making the difference in the lives of the 7 billion souls on this planet. One of the key elements of having a better quality of life, increasing educational standards in developing countries, and to bring more quality to each and every citizen in these developing countries is the notion of lighting and also alternative and renewable energy. And we have someone who's been very active around the planet, a very progressive young man by the name of Steve Casteros. He's the CEO, inventor of what's called No Cairo. He's coming in by telephone, and I have sitting right beside me in case we happen to lose Steve, is David B. Haydes, who is the senior advisor for the Institute for Building Technology and Safety. So if we lose Steve, David and I will pick right up with the conversation and continue it on. But Steve, I believe you're with us.
Yes, I am. Hi, how are you today?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for joining us. And we actually have one of your first slides up here. It says, "Don't buy Cairo, buy No Cairo." And so tell us a little bit about the name and how all this started, Steve.
Yeah, it's actually, No Cairo is the name of our company because kerosene is commonly abbreviated as Cairo in the parts of the world in which we work. It's quite a surprising statistic to think of, but 1.3 billion people, that's about 20% of the world's population, lives without light or without electricity, and the predominant lighting source is kerosene or Cairo. So the name of our company is No Cairo, and we're providing energy alternatives for these 1.3 billion people.
Well, I know that I have met with your colleagues here in the United States, and I know you're headquartered here, and also you have operations around the globe, and I believe you operate out of Hong Kong. And I've been very impressed with the different product line that you have. And I have the second slide up here showing one of your products, which really intrigued me. I was at the Aid and International Development Forum about a year ago, and I saw your light, and I was so intrigued. I think I spent probably about 15 to 20 minutes just talking with your representatives about this ingenious little light. Tell us a little about the products that you have and the style of it. Why is it? It looks like a light bulb, but it's not a light bulb.
Yeah, and I do remember you coming by our booth at the Aid and International Development Forum last year. I wasn't there this year. But the product looks like a traditional light bulb for the purpose that everybody knows what a light bulb is and everybody knows what a light bulb represents. It represents opportunity to extend working hours, opportunity to do education late into the evening without going and looking for a public street light if the if electricity isn't available at one's home. And so on purpose they're designed to look like light bulbs. What they are is there's three core elements. There's a solar panel, a replaceable battery that's the shape of a AA nickel metal hydride battery, and then LED lights that emit light to give light in the evening from the energy stored up in the battery that is produced by the solar panel.
Well, one of the things, Steve, that's really been, I've been in 78 countries now, about 60 of those have been developing countries. And many times you see there where we're shipping secondhand goods, computers, stove, refrigerators, whatever it may be, and they're just absolutely energy hogs. And it looks like what you've done is you're actually, the solar panel is very small, it fits into your light, And so it's appropriate technology for the light, but also it's toteable, portable, and inexpensive, which is some of the things that we try to promote through what we call the Power for Peace.
Oh, what a great slogan there. I definitely believe in that. I think that the reality is that sometimes people think of alternative energy and they start to, in their mind, go to the whole home system that we might use in a Western context, which might cost upwards of $15,000 to $30,000 US. Well, these products, typically, we're talking about our lights right now, retail in India for $12 US, in Haiti, I think they're a little bit less than that, in Mexico at about $14. So these are obtainable because they're burning so much kerosene that the product actually pays for itself after, depends where you are in the world. In Mexico, it's about 14 days. In parts of India, it's upwards of about 1.5 to 2 months.
Oh, that's incredible, Steve, where you have ROI, it's 14 days to about 2 months. Many people would like to have an investment like that.
Yeah, and here I'm talking to you from Denver, Colorado now, and the system that I'm placing on my home would be financially inaccessible if it weren't for subsidies. Well, these individuals that we're bringing these lights to, whether some of them receive them as gifts in humanitarian aid forms, but in general, we're developing a market for distributing these products via just traditional retail outlets.
Well, what we need to do,
the right price.
Yeah, what we need to do is we need to include this in the Power for Peace project we have. But I know that you have this concept that's called energy poverty. Energy poverty. Tell our viewers here and abroad what you mean by energy poverty, and how is No Cairo really addressing this issue?
Sure. Well, access to energy is actually one of the main development goals of entities like, the Millennium Challenge programs, as well as USAID and other just known international development philosophies, because energy gives a lot of benefit to humans. If you go back and there's a lot of scholars that could be more eloquent about describing this, but it's a necessity to advance one's life. What we see is that people are spending up to 30% of their income on lighting sources, whether they be candles or kerosene. And when 30% of your income is going to such a dangerous and polluting and non-renewable product, it really just leads to a cycle of poverty. So whether you call it energy poverty or just the underlying basis of poverty itself, these products really enhance one's life.
Well, my Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. in Washington has a project across South America, and I call it Remove the Flame, but actually 50,000 children every year die from open flames, and about another 7 million have some kind of disaster with open flame. And by you removing that with this Cairo and any other kinds of flammables, that's really commendable. So we need to share that with the Rotary. But how do you get your products? We think $14, that's not much. You're bringing a light literally into an entire household. That may be the only light source they have. But yet, when you go into these communities, you're making $1 a day, and you may have 5, 6, 7 children. $14, that's a lot of money.
Yes, of course. Now, I did mention that some nonprofits like Shelter Box, which is a recipient of a lot of the wonderful efforts of Rotarians worldwide, they actually put, I think it's 5 lights per every shelter box that goes out for disaster response. So in some instances, they're purchased by the container and a container is 30,000 pieces to go into a disaster response situation. Individuals that want to purchase them through a nonprofit can contact us at our website, which is nocairo.com, and we sell samples on our website. Just on a onesie-twosie basis. We've shipped to over 120 countries.
Well, that's one of the things. Steve, we'll try to work with you. We just finished the beta testing, what's called the Emerald Mall, to make available these best practices to 143 countries. So we'll talk about that off program. But how do you get involved with and how do you work with the nonprofits, disaster response community, and also communities of faith, regardless of what that faith may be?
Yeah, I'm not particularly sensitive to how the products make it into the hands of people who need them most. Of course, in the long term, you need something that is financially viable, and building distribution channels for a new product is hard. So we love the work of faith-based groups that see these products as being helpful for an orphanage or for a community, or even on a larger plan to get messages out. We do customization in some instances where we pad print the name of the donor on the bulb if the orders are large enough, and by large enough I mean about 5,000 and 10,000 pieces is kind of our minimum to be able to do customization. But it's shocking when you see what these mean to somebody in a real world use. They just can change lives.
How are you building your sustainable model? I know that you're building local economic development, and Emerald Planet, like you, has this balance between the environment and the economy, because if people can't feed themselves, feed their families, they're not that worried about the environment, and we want to encourage both as far as good quality. So how are you doing that, Steve? And we only have about a minute and 10 seconds left.
Well, our products are meant to be, are designed to be reliable and durable and economical. So I'd say at the highest level, what we're trying to do is, regardless of the acquisition cost or the method of acquisition, making sure that they last for a long time. Any components that wear out, being the battery namely, can be replaced, and that they're as affordable as possible.
Well, we have just a few seconds left. Any key idea you would like to leave with our domestic and international audience?
Just to consider how lucky we are to have access to energy. If you're listening to this program, you have energy, and to rally behind the cause of bringing alternative energy products to those in the world that do not have access to electricity.
Steve, thank you for being with us. He's the CEO inventor of Nocero, bringing about a quality of life where you're bringing in light, removing the flame, as we call it. And we thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
Necesito trabajo. I would like to speak English better. Me gustaría hablar inglés mejor.
I want to be a U.S. citizen.
Quisiera ser ciudadano de los Estados Unidos.
For over 35 years,
Por más de 35 años,
the Hispanic Committee of Virginia has been serving our community.
el Comité Hispano de Virginia ha estado sirviendo a nuestra comunidad.
Job training and placement,
Capacitación, ayuda para conseguir trabajo,
education for children and adults,
educación para niños y adultos,
immigration, naturalization, and medical referrals
ayuda para los procesos de inmigración y naturalización y orientación sobre médicos
are a small part of what we do.
son solo una pequeña parte de lo que hacemos.
For help, information, or to volunteer,
Para ayuda, información o para ofrecerse como voluntario,
contact the Hispanic Committee of Virginia,
comuníquese con el Comité Hispano de Virginia,
helping everyone participate more fully in American society.
ayudando a todos a participar plenamente en la sociedad norteamericana.
Hey, Lena, where's yours?
Would you notice if you were missing half your kidney function? According to the National Kidney Foundation, 20 million people have chronic kidney disease, and 20 million more may be at risk and not even know it. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or family history of chronic kidney disease is at risk. Early diagnosis is vitally important. To get the whole story, talk to your doctor and visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org or call for a free brochure. Because when it comes to chronic kidney disease, you might not know the half of it.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States, looking around the globe for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the products, and the services that are making a difference as the world moves from 7 billion to 9 billion souls by 2050. So how we're going to reach out to all of these new 2 billion people with the food, the fuel, and the fiber that they need to bring about a quality of life that's enjoyed by roughly 1/3 of the world's population, and 2/3 are struggling on a day-to-day basis. 1/3 of these may be living on less than $2 a day. And so there are many groups, organizations, and a number of them are communities of faith, as we call them, irrespective of the religion, that are reaching out into these communities and making a real difference because of their creed and their commitment to humanity, but also to a higher power. They want to make sure that all of humanity has a good quality of life. One of the gentlemen that I met recently, his name is Mitchell C. Hescox, who is the president and CEO of the Evangelical Environment Network. And I know about his network because I met a number of people that are involved with them in the Congo, DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo. And I have with me, in case we lose Mitch, who's coming in by Skype, David B. Haydes, who is the senior advisor with the Institute for Building Technology and Safety. And all these folks are coming together because of what we call pre-disaster planning. Mitch, welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Thank you, Dr.
Glad to have you here, and I have your first slide already up, which shows the lights around the globe. But what is the Evangelical Environment Network? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, EEN, we like to say, is a ministry that is really called to teach people how to care about what we would say is God's creation. We believe that God created this world and He owns it, and we are here to sustain it. And really, I guess our saying is creation care is a matter of life. That how we treat the creation really determines how we create, how we care about human life.
Well, looking at the ministry and the outreach that you have, I know that there's a big emphasis in your philosophy about this ending energy poverty. We've had another speaker that spoke to that, but I know you're looking at this in a very comprehensive way. Tell us what you mean by energy poverty, and how is the Evangelical Environment Network trying to address that?
Well, I think the one thing that we're trying to do most always is to make people aware, just as your previous guest Steve said, of how many people in the world live without electricity. 1.3 billion people live without any electricity, another billion without any reliable electricity. And really, we'd like to get people to understand that energy poverty is a social justice issue. It's about caring for human beings. You mentioned how many children a few minutes ago die from flames. Another 2 million people die every year from the inhalation of smoke from indoor cooking fires. 1 million of those are children. And from my point of view, that's simply just wrong. So we believe with energy poverty, and what we're about is to helping overcome, reduce the deaths of those 2 million people, and also the other things that are related to energy poverty of not being able to store adequate medication, not being able to provide education. Women, the abuse of women, as you well know from being in the Congo and other places around the world, as they go out and gather firewood or look for water, are truly hampered, and the violence is just astronomical against those children because of energy poverty.
Well, looking at that, Mitch, I know that your organization and other communities of faith are really looking at it as far as you want to end energy poverty, and many people don't realize in some countries 85% of your small to medium scale businesses are actually managed, owned by women, and they really are the backbones of the economy because just like the United States, Western Europe, and many countries, we think of ourselves as great industrialists and large-scale business, but actually we all live off the efforts of small to medium-scale business. And so we commend you on this. So how are you involving women and then the children in these communities to help end this energy poverty?
Well, what we're doing, I think, is a rather unique approach. First off, I think what we would like to see is the church here in America, any community of faith, being engaged in this issue. And we would like to see, what we like to call it, the next great cause of freedom, is that we believe as we provide people with energy that they can control, that's sustainable, that is renewable, they can actually have a greater sense of freedom in their lives, freedom from education, disease, and all of us know that because of political situations around the world, so many times energy is used as a bargaining tool.
Well, in some countries I've lived in and actually worked in, almost 85% of the population are what we call off-grid, or they have no access, as you were saying, Mitch, to energy of any type. And so the children, when they come back from school, it gets dark, they have no way to do their homework. And so it's just like you're spinning wheels in order to try to advance a society. But going back to those numbers you're talking about, I'm going to add that into my presentation because I didn't realize the number of deaths. But the increased incidence as far as tuberculosis, as far as all health, breathing illnesses and all that really go back to these open flames, not counting just the number of children that literally just burn to death on a year-to-year basis.
And I think what's really nice about your program tonight is what we're doing is really the working of both of your guests that have been on previous to me. We're helping worship centers, whether of all faiths, in the United States. There are around 400,000 houses of worship in the United States. And if we could get 10% energy saving out of those houses, we could reduce just even their cost about $350 million. And we found through a study that we were able to work with the Department of Energy here in the United States that we can get 3 to 5% energy savings rather easily, the low-hanging fruit, just simple controls. And so if we can help houses of worship, communities of faith, to take that energy savings, make them more aware of energy poverty as a justice issue, and then to help with our relief and development organizations to develop sustainable energy plans, and quite honestly, a business model around the world, whether it's solar, wind, biomass. There are a variety of technologies, as you well know, that can be out there to help communities to self-empower themselves, to educate their children, and to return, quite honestly, their community into their own hands and develop truly in a sustainable way.
I want to try to put up some of these slides that we have, and we're going to put you in a cameo position, Mitch, if you don't mind, and show some of the conditions that people are living in these countries and how your particular organization is addressing these. If we can bring up the next slide and keep you on here. But David's sitting very patiently with me, and I'm going to let him ask the next question, Mitch, if you don't mind, and then you and I will get back together after David presents his question.
I would like to have you address the scale at which these renewable energy programs can work to reduce energy poverty. Are we talking about small-scale technologies, large-scale technologies, regional? At what scale do you believe it can work?
Well, I think, David, and that's why you're here. I think we just lost Skype, and so the sound engineer is going to bring David back. But looking at this house, this is probably somewhere in Africa. Looks like some of the homes I've actually had to visit. And you see the open flame, you see the use of the local wood product. And not only, David, is it very dangerous because of breathing these heavy particulates in these structures, but also they're using the biomass just burning it. And so that's really, it's really a terrible thing. And so we need to get on to where we're using more renewables. And I think that's what, David, you're all about. I'm going to go ahead and use Mitch's slides here, but going into your organization, the Institute for Building Technology and Safety, what are you doing as far as introducing these new technologies as far as what's going on in your organization so that people who are not of means or do not have access to the grid can have a better quality of life?
One of the programs that addresses low-income people in the United States is the Weatherization Assistance Program of the Department of Energy. Under the incentive program a couple of years ago, ARRA, the amount of funding from the federal government to the Weatherization Assistance Program has multiplied about 20-fold to what it was before. Oh, that's incredible. I
had no idea.
And our company was retained to monitor all of this money is being spent on low-income families to try to improve the energy use in their homes. And the Department of Energy felt it was necessary to monitor the effectiveness of that spending. And we're working with Oak Ridge National Laboratory as we speak, reviewing the inspections that determined what improvements to put into these homes, as well as the homes themselves.
Looking at this picture here that was shared by Mitch Hescox, President and CEO of the Evangelical Environment Network, we see this young man actually cleaning the solar panels being used in these small villages to bring in renewables. What kinds of things through the IBTS are you doing as far as introducing solar not only here but abroad, David?
At the moment, our efforts are primarily here in introducing solar, and we're looking at the regulatory environment under which these technologies, and it's just a solar, but also small-scale wind turbines, what kind of zoning requirement would permit us to introduce these technologies without, and yet maintain historic preservation, historic character, and others. So that's an effort we're actively involved in, and we hope to bring that experience to our work overseas.
Well, I know that we'll end up on this particular question, but I think this is something you can address. We only have a few seconds, but I think working with your IBTS and various communities of faith and many others, you can really make a difference.
I certainly hope so. We have to work with the entire scope of business, communities of faith, and governments, local and state.
Well, thank you for being with us. We're sorry that we lost Mitch Hescox of the Evangelical Environment Network as we create the Emerald Planet.
It might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome back to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States, bringing you experts that are addressing the issues that are facing the 7 billion souls on the planet. And as we move towards 2050, some 9 billion people are estimated to be on the planet. So how are we going to provide the fuel, the food, the fiber, the energy, the infrastructure, everything that's needed for modern societies across the globe? The 196 plus or minus countries are represented through the United Nations, and then many of the territories that are under various nation states. And we have experts that are coming on and talking with us. And one gentleman is Dr. Frederick Krimgold, who is the Director for Disaster Risk Reduction Program. Quite a long title there, Fred. He's at Virginia Tech, which is one of the major land-grant universities in the United States. And I'm going to put Fred on the spot, and he'll tell us what that's all about, the Advanced Research Institute. And before we get into talking about this pre-disaster planning, disaster recovery, tell us a little bit about Virginia Tech as a land-grant university.
Well, Virginia Tech has a role as the major technological university in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And as a land-grant university, it has 3 primary missions. First, education. Secondly, research. And thirdly, public service, technical assistance to communities and the population throughout the state.
I know the outreach through that, the Cooperative Extension Service is actually, it's almost a cradle to grave type of organization. And I came up through that system being from Blacksburg, so Virginia Tech was actually some of my playground through elementary and high school. Mm-hmm. And it's in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and actually around the globe, it's just about everywhere you can possibly be. And that's really brings us to this Advanced Research Institute. But you're not only working with that, there's actually 3 other organizations that you're working with within Virginia Tech and outreaching around the United States and abroad. What are those different organizations? And then we'll focus on the Advanced Research Institute.
Right. Well, we have created a World Institute for Disaster Risk Management, which was developed in collaboration with the Swiss Federal Institutes of Technology in Switzerland, with the Swiss Reinsurance Company and the World Bank, and a number of other universities in disaster-prone countries around the world. And that organization has provided for collaborative research on better understanding of natural and technological hazards and the development of measures for the reduction of risk and for more rapid recovery following disasters. The second organization is the IEEN, the International Energy Efficiency Network, which we have created primarily between U.S. and European partnerships of cities and universities with the goal of providing educational research and technical collaboration at the municipal level between universities like Virginia Tech and proximate cities.
Well, let's move into this chain of causality. I know that this Advanced Research Institute and the 3 others that you've introduced to us are all part of this chain of causality. What is that, and how does that relate internationally to local communities, states, federal government level, and then involving citizens in this whole chain, as we call it?
Well, in the disaster business, we have talked about traditionally 4 phases of activity: mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. And the first 2 come before the disaster. They are pre-disaster activities. And mitigation really covers the actions that can be taken to reduce risk, that is to reduce the likelihood of impact. And that can be land use management to avoid building in hazardous areas, safe construction to ensure that buildings resist the loads imposed by natural hazards. And the second 2, well, sorry, I should say the preparedness phase looks at issues of emergency response. That is preparedness to respond. So that is putting in place the resources, the rescue services, the reserves of materials, tents, so on. And then the response phase is what happens after the event. And the recovery phase is the rebuilding, or as I think an earlier speaker said, building back better opportunity, where one really considers how one can reconstruct and reestablish economic and social stability in the long term.
Well, looking at the regulatory systems, and I guess, you know, the conversations that we've had, Fred, is we want to stay away from just this regulatory, but how can we work with local, state, regional, national level governments, but also the private businesses, NGOs, non-governmental organizations, international bodies, and also the private citizens. So they're really all part of the process so that you're building the very best buildings, the best technology, even in poorer countries, because we know we have about 150 of these that are more or less marginalized economically, or most of the citizens. So how do we bring all that together so everybody benefits and we get the very best possible?
Well, it's a very great challenge. We have done a lot of work at the international level through international financial organizations and the United Nations and other global structures. But primarily it's been at the national level that donors have been organized and that we have dealt with the national governments in disaster-prone countries. And what I think we see as a major area of focus for the future is the local level. That is, that the decisions that actually impact on exposure, that actually affect people's safety, are much closer to home. And we need to find ways to effectively support local organizations, local governments, local community organizations in developing the capacity and the understanding necessary to build safe communities and reduce losses.
Well, this inverted pyramid, as they call it, is actually, you're looking at the majority of the society, because we all live in local communities, no matter whether we're in Russia and we happen to be in Moscow or Tokyo in Japan or Seoul in Korea, or you know, these various major national capital cities. But yet everybody lives in a local area, and so what you're talking about is that we need to start looking at these local areas, and then it's almost like then you go down to the regional, state, and federal or the national governmental level.
Right. Well, and the other thing is that in order to support that local level, we need to do a number of things in terms of preparing individuals. We need to train builders, we need to train designers, we need to train managers, we need to train inspectors, all these people who operate within the community to understand what hazards are and how they can best be responded to. And so in looking at the complex of issues involved in reducing risk, we have to dig pretty deep into the community, and it is a long-term activity. It's in many cases taken us generations to create the problem, and it may take us generations to solve it.
Well, you know, this whole thing of the problem and solving it in many countries like the United States, Canada, Western Europe, Japan, is very strict codes as far as how you build the buildings, where you're located. And of course, then you're dealing with the issues of personal property rights and who actually owns and control and what they can do with that property. And in many ways, this is like there's literally in these developing countries, there's millions of jobs waiting, and we need to have very technically competent people, but also a judicial system where it's the rule of law, not the rule of man, as you know we talk about in our old JC days. And so how do we bring this balance so we have the judiciary, we have the local governments, and then we have the citizens, so again they all feel like that they're working together and you're not having one really just oppressing the other in order to have its will, which is usually the government in most cases.
Well, in a way, the tools that we have seen work in the developed world of regulatory process, that is building standards and codes and land use management, are the effective ways that we have for reducing risk. And what we see in the developing world is that the institutions don't exist or don't have the authority or don't have the technical capacity to apply these same tools. And so we're really talking about a fundamental aspect of societal development, the development of capacity for self-regulation, the development of the capacity to arrive at a consensus, societal consensus, on what is an adequate level of safety and what is a responsible behavior for developers, builders, people who have to hold the public trust.
So what you're doing, Fred, is you're building in there where the citizens feel like that they're part of the issue, but also a major part of the solution in dealing with that, because then they say we need to have faith in our judiciary, we need to have faith in the building officials and inspectors or what have you, and then they demand and hold them accountable.
Exactly. And the most effective foundation for a culture of safe building is an informed and vigilant public, because those are the people who are going to support the implementation of the regulatory approach. They are also, as consumers, going to, through the market, choose safe solutions.
Thank you, and as we come to you through Emerald Planet, we're just going to continue because